I'm Rob from Barefoot Gaming, and this is our super fun, happy times, must-have games list of September 2018. So I get a lot of requests for top 10 or best of lists, and what I have done this time is I have listed the best games, the top 2 of a bunch of different genres. So without getting further into this, let's start listing them off and telling you what it is that made them stand out for me. Now I'm going to start off with free games. In free games, I'm going to start with the Lab in Steam. Now the Lab has a bunch of mini games inside of it. So it's got everything from a really good quality archery game to nod to in GLaDOS to a little bit of Portal. It's got slingshot games, it's even got like a Rick and Morty voice is actually one of the things inside of there. It's got a bunch of different things that you can try out, and this will give you an experience in actually moving around as well as teleporting in virtual reality. Highly recommended. Number 2 on the list for free games would be Lucky's Tale. Now, doesn't matter again which system you have. If you're running a Vive and you need to install the Oculus software to get this game for free, you need Revive installed. You grab a gamepad. Lucky's Tale follows kind of like a Super Mario style, except everything is in VR. Now, they spent a lot of money on this, and it shows. Rounding out free games, Lucky's Tale hits number 2. Next up, I'm doing racing games, and I'm not talking car racing, I am talking racing, and that would be you moving from beginning to end. And I cannot talk about a racing game without talking about Sprint Vector. Sprint Vector is incredible. Everything about it screams well done. From the very first time that you run up by using your hands and swinging them up and down, the first time you're jumping over obstacles, this, I don't like to keep referencing this, but I really can't help but think of this being like Mario Kart in VR without a kart and without Mario and without turtle shells. Maybe that was the wrong analogy, but it's a fun kart without a kart racing game. Good game. Get it if you don't have it. Next up on the list would be To the Top. Now, To the Top is a parkour style racing game where the constant goal is to make sure you're aiming for only certain objects that you can grab and not stopping. So anytime you grab something, you lose momentum and you're unable to get further ahead. The music in this one is great. The visuals, although they look simple, are, I think, well done. There's neat mechanics. There's moving vehicles that you can grab and throw yourself from. There's towers that you try to race up to the top. To the Top is lots of fun. Highly recommend it. At number 3, we've got music / workout, which is kind of a weird combo, but all the music games make you work out anyway. Beat Saber, number 1 without a doubt. Grab your lightsabers, start cutting blocks in half to funky music. It's just fun. It's fun slicing stuff in half. It's got multiple difficulty levels, so if you're not good at music games, you can scale it back and make it easier. This is one where everything just feels great. The force feedback in your controllers when you're slicing the blocks in half, dodging the great big obstacles, fantastic game. Next up, Box VR. And Box VR was one that I struggled to actually even play initially because nothing about it really stood out visually to me. However, once I got in, it totally changed my mind. The mechanics are well done. It's maybe not as flashy as some of the other music games, but this is a game that actually makes you have fun and makes you soar. Now, the very first time I played it, I played for like an hour and I was like, this is really neat. And it's supposed to make you, you know, put you in better shape and such, but I wasn't thinking of any of that. However, the next day when I tried to move and I could feel the muscles under my arms were hurting, I could feel all sorts of things. I'm like, this thing is actually doing good for my body. Box VR, you get high props, you move to number 2. I'm gonna follow it up with platformers, and I don't know why platformers don't get more love in VR. Number 1 is Tenertia. Dark Horse, most of you, unless you've watched our review on Tenertia, will probably never have heard of it. Tenertia is insanely difficult, but it's insanely difficult in a fun way. Every time you lose, you feel like you know why you lost, and you can do better. So it's punishing, but it's not punishing in a way that you're throwing your controller across the room or getting angry. It's got cute graphics. It's crazy difficult. Watch our review if you haven't and you're unsure. If you've never tried a platformer in VR, you're really missing out because there's something about seeing it from that third-person perspective when everything around you is, it's just beautiful. Following up with kind of like an indie game, now we're gonna go to a bigger studio with Moss. Now Moss, you are controlling a mouse. and a mouse with a sword. The storyline is very interesting. They've spent a lot of money again on this one to make it look really high-end. You as the controller also have the ability to move things around the screen to make it possible for your character to get from beginning to end. It's got a fair amount of length, so you're getting good value, and Moss sits at number 2. Puzzle games. Now I expect you to die number 1. This is James Bond with a heavy sense of humor. Everything about this had me laughing. The ridiculousness of what you run up against, it's lots of fun, and there are multiple ways to beat individual missions. So just because you think you know a way to do it, you can go back in and try another. And even if you can't, even if you can only play through it once, it is enough fun, even with a single playthrough on all 5 or 6 missions that they give you. It definitely sits at number 1. I'm gonna follow that one up with Budget Cuts. Now, I wasn't sure if this would really fall under a puzzle game because there's action, there's stealth, but in the end, really this boils down to you figuring out how to move past guards often, or how to get through doors. So this game it's stealth based, and you use a portal gun to be able to see around corners to see where enemies are, to move through it to get from point A to point B. But at the end of the day, this is just a fun puzzle game. You cannot talk VR without talking wave shooters, because there are a plethora of these. And you know, a bunch of you may not agree with this, but honestly, one of the most fun wave shooters, I think, is still Space Pirate Trainer, and that's one of the first wave shooters that came out. They've adapted it, they've been doing updates on it in the background, and this is one I love to throw people into that have never been in VR before. I like the fact that it lets you move around your play space if you have play space. It lets you use a shield. The guns are lots of fun, and there's a variation of guns, there's a variation of enemies. Space Pirate Trainer, number 1. At number 2, I'm gonna incorporate zombies. So Zomday would be our second wave shooter recommendation. This game has, well, clearly it has zombies, but it also has lots of options in upgrading weapons. Every time you clear a level, and no matter how the levels are set up, it's just wave after wave. If you can survive enough waves, you move to the next level. You earn money by killing zombies, and with that money you can choose what kind of ammo, because you have to buy ammo for your guns, or you can buy different kinds of guns. Zomday is got lots of depth for a wave shooter. Again, for a small studio of I think 6 or 7 developers, number 2, Zomday, highly recommended. Now I'm gonna follow that up with experiences. That's what I'm calling this category. Now this is something where it's maybe not a game, it's more something that you're just going to experience that's fun. And I have to list at number 1, Richie's Plank. However, there's a caveat to this. In Richie's Plank, the primary concept is to head up an elevator, step out the elevator door, walk across a plank, turn around, and walk back. Now there's variations to this. You can press 666 in the elevator and you get a horror experience. You can go to a firefighting floor and fly around the city, kind of like Iron Man putting out fires. But this game is really, really fun when you physically set up a board. I cannot stress that enough. If this game were just based on walking on the floor and not elevating a board, I myself use like little pieces of 2x4 on each end, or if I'm being mean, I'll use foam on one end and a 2x4 on the other. But this is one that will actually give you that feeling of, I am actually way too high and this is unsafe. Richie's Plank, number 1, no question. Number 2, I really struggled on this one. I'm not gonna say it. I said I wouldn't. I'm only gonna do number 1 and number 2. Number 2 would be Ultimate Booster Experience. And this is an experience. Now, even for people that are easily motion sick, this hasn't been an issue with anyone that I've shown it to. If you want a challenge, try standing up while this ride swings you back and forth and over and around. It messes with your head in a fantastic way. It's a good time. This is something that if you have VR and you want to impress other people into how much VR can affect your brain, you gotta pick this one up. And this is one where you really want to clear the area in case you stumble and fall, because that is going to happen. If it's not going to happen to you, it's going to happen to somebody that you throw into it. Action games. Now this is such a broad term that I really struggled with trying to figure out which games would fall into this. But again, for must-haves in action, the first thing that comes to mind, and one that I keep going back to for fun, especially when you have friends over, would be Gorn. Gorn is a gladiator combat game that is so over the top. You can grab your combatants, you can tear their arms off and beat them over the head with it. The weapons are super rubbery. Nothing about this feels realistic. Nothing. but it's just fun. The negative to this game is this is one that more than any other game, people slam into ceilings, they slam into walls. This is a controller breaker, so you really need to be careful that you know where everything is and try to maintain some control over yourself. Number 2, I am picking Super Hot. Now, Super Hot storyline is lots of fun. The concept is whenever an enemy attacks you, doesn't matter if it's with a bullet, with anything, if you don't move, nothing else moves. As you move, things move around you. So that's the experience, and that's how you have to figure out how to get through all the levels. But even after you beat all the levels, you still have endless modes. You still have like multiple different modes that will keep you engaged. And if I have somebody coming over that, you know, has played a little bit of VR or no VR, I can drop them into Super Hot and we will both have piles of fun regardless of your skill level. And lastly, because I could go on, but I don't want to bore you guys and I don't want this list to be infinitely long, I am going to go with ports. Now, I picked ports because there's some really good games out there that should be on your list. And number 1, I'm going to pick Skyrim VR. If you are looking for a game that has an incredible number of hours of depth, if you like role-playing games, this game allows you to teleport, it allows you to do slide movement. This game has, if you are familiar with Elder Scrolls at all, Skyrim VR is great. And some people complain that because it's a port, it doesn't allow you to pick objects up, right? Physically pick them up, you have to click them, you have to select them. It's more like using a mouse than it is physically interacting. But the trade-off to that is you have hundreds and hundreds of hours of possible gameplay in Skyrim VR. So balancing out the two until VR gets really, really large, until we have a large enough install base that we can have developers like Bethesda actually making games built for VR, I don't have complaints. Skyrim VR is well worth their asking price, lots of fun, and crazy amounts of replayability. At number 2, and this one I almost forgot about, is Minecraft VR. Now, there's different versions. You have Minecraft VR for the Rift, but if you're running Windows Mixed Reality or Vive, you want to run Vivecraft. Now, the only thing I'm going to say about this, if you don't know what Minecraft is, I mean, get on the internet and look around a little bit. Minecraft is massive, right? The concept is simple: survive, build a shelter, make tools, etc., etc. But the neat thing about experiencing Minecraft in VR is it feels so much bigger. The first time I heard a hiss behind me of a stupid creeper that blew up, no words. I have no words. Minecraft is a really neat experience in VR. If you are susceptible to motion sickness at all, turn teleportation on clearly, and also make sure that jumping is off. So instead of jumping up steps, you teleport onto steps. Even if you're gonna straight slide move instead of teleport, the jump mechanic is something that messes me right up. So that's the only caveat there. And that's where I'm gonna run the list for today. Those are the top 2 for ports. I mean, there's sports, there's educational, local multiplayer, there's driving games, space flight, flight, horror games. I kind of would like to, I'm a sucker for horror games. I'd love to do a, best of horror or rank the ones I've played. I have not played all the games, like I mentioned. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear your recommendations. If there are other lists that you like, let me know. If nobody watches this, I know that this list idea was a bad idea. And that's it. Subscribe if you want to see more of our stuff. I think every game, not every game, but almost every game that I've mentioned, we have reviewed at some point. So if you look through our stuff, some of it's going to look bad. I got to warn you, the older reviews are rough. I don't watch them anymore because the lighting, the audio, etc., etc. But they should all be there. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I will always do my best to help you guys out. On that note, I am out of here. I will talk to you again real soon. See ya.